So hi, Coco.
Hey.
So thank you for joining us today. We could start by just if you telling us a bit about your story. Today's all about kind of processing change and harnessing it for personal growth. So if you could kind of tell us a bit of your story, I guess with a bit of insight into a major life event that you've been through.
Yeah, sure, definitely. Yeah, sure. So first of all, thank you for having me. I guess it all started for myself personally with relationships. So I guess growing up with finding myself in certain situations and not being able to cope with change as much. And I think growing up, it wasn't something that I was sort of paying attention to. So I found myself in a relationship with a woman from the age of 16 for 9 years. And through that relationship, there was trials, there was trivia, there was hurdles, like all that usual relationship stuff. And then I guess as the years progressed, stuff started happening, I guess, that made me feel like it was myself, and I wasn't really sure with what was happening, what that change was. Why was I experiencing these things? Why was I feeling these things? And I guess being in my first adult lesbian relationship at only being 16 also, and then I guess being with someone too, also the person I was with was also 5.5 years older than me. So I guess just going with this and thinking this is how I'm supposed to be feeling. These days, sometimes I feel really sad. I don't want to get out of bed today. Why is that? The next day I'm feeling great. Things are happening, all that kind of stuff really. And I guess I wasn't sure why I was feeling these emotions. And then with this kind of stuff that happened, I guess, there was physical stuff that used to happen within the relationship. And I guess, like I said, feeling all these emotions with all this change happening too. And I guess myself, I wasn't processing anything. I was just sort of, as we all do, push it under the rug, it's fine, it'll change, without actually making the change happen. And I think for myself, that was the biggest sort of flip and change in my life of how I was feeling these emotions, what was happening, how did I need to process them? Because I was starting to become depressed. I was starting to have, my anxiety was through the roof. I wasn't leaving my house. I wasn't socializing with friends like I would. Just all the normal things you start to see changing. And I guess you have people telling you, you're not going to listen. I didn't want to listen to anything. I thought people were against me. You know, those typical things when you are so love struck, I guess, kind of thing. And those kind of hurdles, I guess, kept leading me to a situation to where, like, this is a bit heavy for everybody. And I hope I'm not touching any points for anyone, but it took me to the point of where I was becoming suicidal and where like really impactful stuff was happening. And I've been a professional dancer all my life. I used to travel the world. I stopped doing dance, like even things you love. And like you said, Michael, with change, you realize starts impacting all these little things in your life. And you think, okay, something can't be right if it's impacting everything I love so negatively. And then it sort of brought me to myself to be like, okay, I need to make this change now to stop impacting the change that's happening that I don't want or ask for, kind of thing. So I guess.
So do you think that was more kind of actually surrendering to it rather than kind of, so probably there was almost like a resistance, and that was what was causing this distress?
Exactly. And I think it was the resistance of not accepting it for what it was because of the change that was happening around me, because I couldn't cope with that change as well.
What was it?
I would say it being the relationship for me, with my life and every single aspect around it being, whether that's my work, whether that's my friendship, that's my feelings, just not even being able to feel stable. I had no stability anymore. My mental health, I found, was changing faster than I was, and I wasn't dealing with it or understanding it. So instead of saying, okay, why is this change happening? Why is my mental state declining? I didn't recognize, I guess. And it came to the point of me being rushed into hospital and such drastic change happening for me to be like, okay, I need to now change my surroundings. And like a bit like Saul was saying earlier, like everything has an impact. So if you're not sorting the beginning of your story, for instance, my middle and my ending then wasn't going the way that I thought it was going to. And I guess that led me into the change of relationships. So I went from one into the one I am now, and they're polar opposites, and I'm polar opposite as a person in how I deal with things and in my growth and all that kind of stuff.
Do you think there was anything around, I guess, when you first started that relationship? I mean, I don't know whether Saul is going to talk about this later, but the pillars of our life, and almost kind of ensuring that we're not trying to make changes across multiple pillars. So whether it's, family, work, a romantic relationship. And I guess when we come out or start exploring, it can sometimes affect all of those. And that's where this kind of domino effect can happen. And then it becomes a bit confusing because we don't know actually what is the originating experience. So you mentioned kind of externally how that was showing up, and some of those internal struggles as well. What did you actually do to connect more with yourself, to understand what you needed?
So what I needed to do to connect with myself, I needed to really deep myself. And what I mean by that, I needed to get into accepting me first of all, and accepting my change. So my change period and my growth and my connection, let's say, with this sort of protocol of change and dealing with it was laying in a hospital bed. I had just had my appendix out. I had a wife, because we were married at the time, that didn't come and see me for 10 days. And then I had this other person there that was showing me all this attention, all this understanding. So for me, it was connecting with somebody and speaking on a level of self-acceptance. Because I think with our mental health and with change, the biggest thing I think personally is the fact it's so daunting. So it's just admitting and, like we said, accepting and thinking, okay, now what can I do to connect with that, to change the future? So for me, it was really deepening with myself and knowing I had to make those changes myself. So it's all good for us to say, like we said, oh, it's because of that, or it's because of that. However, I needed to take a grasp of a tiny part of that just to make that change. And with doing so, I left that relationship.
Yeah. So you mentioned it was daunting. I guess that's the risk part.
Yes.
So what was the risk that you were kind of, what did you risk losing, or what was actually scaring you?
Yeah, I think the whole thing was scaring me was the fact that I thought that I was losing my support. And I think for our mental health, support is one of the key factors. That's what keeps us going. That's what keeps us alive, in the sense of we need support. So I think for myself, I had latched onto someone and so many sort of negative emotions that I was used to feeling. So the anxiety, the stress, the depression, that become my normality. So it was daunting, the fact of leaving and breaking sort of that chain and feeling free, like shaking it off to be like, okay, I need to do this for myself now. I need to get into that change, put my big girl boots on, kind of thing, and like step into that. Yeah. And it was daunting. And I think for all of us, we've all been in relationships, whether it's good to bad, bad to good, or just wasn't working for ourselves. And I think it's that change of everything's going to be new for me tomorrow, kind of thing. I'm going to wake up, I'm going to be by myself. I'm not going to have someone to kiss goodnight. Those little things that keep us going as human beings. We need the connection. The relationship is what keeps us all going as people. And I think, as we all know, if we were all just by ourselves forever, that would be hella lonely. None of us we'd all be depressed, right? Do you know what I mean? Kind of thing. So I just learned, I guess, too, that relationships were super important, that I wasn't realizing, and I was ignoring the ones that sort of mattered as well.
Okay, thanks. And how do you handle vulnerability now on a kind of daily basis?
This is a good one. So I guess with vulnerability, it's more, how can I say, right? So I guess I take it step by step, day by day. because with now, especially, I'm sure we can all relate with everything changing in the world. Rules and regulation are changing daily. Our lives are all changing. Some people got a job one day, some people haven't. I think it's just about accepting that my mind and body will always be this way. So through going all these changes and all these sort of errors throughout life, it led me to not sort of accepting myself and believing myself, which I got diagnosed with ADHD at a younger age. And I guess that was part of it. So like I said to you myself, when we first started connecting, change for me, I don't cope with anyway, personally, very well. So with things that are happening now and being vulnerable, it's more me being so transparent. So by me being honest about myself, allows me to be vulnerable and allows me to realize it's okay. And I think that is scary for us all, to give ourselves to people even we don't know, the world, the innocent, especially because society tells us all we must be certain ways. So whether you're gay, whether you're religious, whether you're a person of color, no matter what it is, society will always try and box us in. So I think it's just breaking through that and allowing change to happen, and change can be a good thing. It's not always as scary as we imagine, I guess.
Awesome. Thank you very much for that. That was great.
No problem.
So now we're going to head over to part 2.